Have you ever thought about what would happen if you just vanished from someone's life? No notice, no explanation, just complete silence. How would they react if you disappeared without a trace? In a world where people often take others for granted, disappearing can stir up a storm of emotions they never saw coming. What would they really feel when you're no longer around? This video will take you through the powerful emotional journey they'll go on when you decide to walk away for good. We're diving into 9 stages of intense emotions they'll experience when you simply vanish. By the end of this, you'll understand why sometimes the best thing you can do is remove yourself from their life entirely. If you've ever been treated like you were just an option, this video is a must-watch. You'll discover how disappearing can make them realize your true value in a way they never expected. And stick around till the end, because we're revealing a bonus 10th emotional reaction, one that will completely shift the way you view your relationships. Ready to reclaim your power and make them miss you like never before? Drop a comment saying, "I'm no one's second choice," and let's explore what happens when you disappear and take back control. You won't want to miss this. Let's get started. Stage 1, the sudden jolt of realization. The moment you disappear, it's like a punch to the gut they never saw coming. In their mind, you were always a constant, a presence they could rely on, someone who made the effort, who cared deeply. You were the one who always reached out, who made them feel important. They thought they had you figured out and that you'd always be around when they needed you. But then, without warning, you vanish. And just like that, their world is turned upside down. This is the real sting. It's not just about you being physically absent. It's about the emotional void you've left behind. You were their emotional anchor, their comfort, their validation, and now all of that is gone. It's a deep cut, not just some minor rejection. They don't just feel abandoned, they feel exposed. They realize they no longer control you, and that's a bitter pill to swallow. You were never just an option to them before, but once you disappear, they're forced to reckon with the fact that they took you for granted. Here's the kicker. When you vanish without any warning, it makes them feel like they've been blindsided. They might even think, how did I let this happen? How did I lose someone who was always there for me? The truth hits them hard. They thought they were doing you a favor by keeping you around. The irony is, it was you who was holding things together, giving them something they could never fully appreciate until it was gone. And let me tell you, the more sudden the disappearance, the harder the impact. Don't give them any forewarning, no goodbye, no explanation. Just disappear. That's the power of walking away without any hint, without any drama. The jolt of realization hits them, and they're left to reflect on how they took your presence for granted. This is when they finally feel what it's like to lose control over you. The emotional safety net they once had, gone. You've just left the building, and they're left to figure out how to pick up the pieces. Stage 2, the gnawing void. Once the sting of rejection starts to fade, something far more unsettling creeps in. Emptiness. At first, they didn't think they'd miss you. In fact, they probably convinced themselves they wouldn't care if you left. They told themselves, if they go, I'll be fine. I'll just move on. But here's the truth. Once you disappear, they're hit with a void that they can't ignore. It's not just any emptiness. It's a deep, gnawing feeling that lingers. They go through their day as usual, doing the same routine, but something is painfully absent. That's when it hits them. You were the one who gave their life depth, meaning, and energy. When someone takes you for granted, they treat your presence like background noise, always there, but never fully appreciated. They think they can replace you or that you're just part of the scenery, but no one can replace what you brought to their world. You were more than just a filler. You were the emotional warmth, the spark, the stability they didn't even realize they depended on. And now that empty space is a constant reminder of what they've lost. They might try to distract themselves. Maybe they'll turn to new people, dive into work, or immerse themselves in hobbies, hoping to fill the gap you left behind. But guess what? It won't work. The void will still be there, eating away at them, reminding them of what they took for granted. No matter how hard they try to move on, nothing fills that space quite like you did. Here's the kicker. When you were there, they didn't truly value what you brought to their life. Maybe they thought you'd always be around, or that they could do better. But as soon as you vanish, everything changes. They start to crave the little things, the conversations, the inside jokes, the comfort you brought with your presence. And when they can't reach you, that void grows even deeper. They realize that you weren't just another person in their life, you were the person who made it better, more vibrant, and full of meaning. To really make them feel this void, make sure you vanish without leaving a trace. Block them, delete your contact info, and make it impossible for them to reach out. The harder it is for them to access you, the deeper the emptiness becomes. Each time they think of you and realize they can't just check in, the void will expand, reminding them of the space you once filled. Let them sit in that emptiness. The more they feel the absence, the more they'll realize exactly what you brought to their world. And trust me, that realization stings more than they ever expected. Stage 3. The insatiable curiosity. By now they're drowning in the void, and something even more powerful takes over. Curiosity. It begins as a spark, but quickly grows into an all-consuming fire. They can't help themselves. The big question they're now obsessed with is, where are they? What are they doing? Who are they with? The absence of answers eats away at them, and they find themselves spiraling into a vortex of doubt and wonder. You've become an enigma, a mystery they can't solve, and nothing unsettles someone more than not knowing what's happening with someone they once had access to. In today's world, this curiosity is amplified by the power of social media. They'll stalk your Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, every platform you once shared your life on, desperate for any clue about what you're doing. But here's the twist. You're giving them nothing. No updates, no stories, no posts. You've gone completely dark, and that silence is driving them insane. Why? Because humans hate the unknown. And the moment you vanish, their mind starts running wild with questions. Are you seeing someone else? Are you better off without them? The insecurity creeps in, and they can't stop wondering if you've moved on. At this point, their curiosity doesn't stop at social media. They may even turn to mutual friends trying to fish for any scrap of information about you. They'll ask questions, but their pride will keep them from ever admitting how much they care. It's almost pathetic. Someone who once thought they could live without you, now desperately seeking answers. It's a strange, almost heartbreaking shift. But here's the kicker. Curiosity is powerful. When people can't find the answers they want, their imagination takes over. They'll start picturing you with someone else, imagining you happier, more fulfilled without them. And that thought, those possibilities become a constant weight on their mind. What began as curiosity quickly turns into an obsession, and the more they don't know, the more desperate they become to find out. So here's how you fuel that curiosity. Become a ghost. Go completely off the grid. Don't post anything that might hint at what you're doing or where you are. Let them wonder. Let them stew in their thoughts. The more they check their phone and find nothing, the more it will drive them mad. You hold all the power now, and their obsessive curiosity is your greatest asset. Don't give them answers. Give them silence. Let them live with the mystery. Stage 4. The harsh mirror of self-reflection. Now things get intense, and not in a good way for them. After days, maybe even weeks of wondering about you, they're finally forced to confront the truth. This is where the real self-reflection begins, and it's brutal. They start asking themselves the difficult questions. Was I too distant? Was I too cold? Did I push them away? Did I mess this up? And with those questions come the creeping weight of regret. It's like a cold, bitter pill that's impossible to swallow. Let's face it, people rarely own up to their mistakes easily. It's human nature to deflect blame, to make excuses. But when you disappear, you leave them with no one else to blame but themselves. Without you there to smooth things over or offer reassurance, they're forced to confront their behavior head-on, and that's when the guilt starts gnawing at them. They replay every moment, every conversation, every time they ignored your feelings or took you for granted. And it hits them hard because, deep down, they know they had something real. They know they were the ones who let it slip away. And here's the kicker. They can't escape the self-reflection. They can't turn to you for an explanation or try to make excuses. You've disappeared, and now they're stuck with their own thoughts. The longer they sit with it, the harder it gets. Every memory, every mistake, every time they let you down starts to surface. It's a painful internal process, and the guilt only grows as time goes on. They wish they could go back and change things, but the truth is, they can't. During this stage, the worst thing you can do is reach out. Don't explain why you left or try to make them understand. Don't rescue them from their guilt. Let them sit with it. Self-reflection is most powerful when it's left to unfold naturally. The more time they spend reflecting, the more they'll realize that their actions led to this moment and that they were the ones who sabotaged what they had with you. Let them carry that weight. It's a lesson they need to learn, and only by facing it head-on will they truly understand the value of what they lost. Stage 5. The desperate pursuit. After spending enough time in self-reflection, something shifts. The guilt fades, and the desire to make things right takes over. The tables have completely turned. You were once the one putting in all the effort, the one chasing, the one trying to make things work. But now it's their turn. The urge to pursue you becomes overwhelming. They can't stop thinking about you, and the question, is it too late, keeps them up at night. Suddenly, it's all about getting you back. They'll start with those subtle moves, texts that say, "I've been thinking about you," maybe liking your old posts or even dropping comments just to see if you'll respond. Expect a few late-night messages after a couple of drinks, hoping to spark something, anything to rekindle what they once had. They're chasing now, and it feels like a shift they never anticipated. But here's the thing. Now that they're pursuing you, you hold all the power. They went from taking you for granted to desperately trying to win you back. They're realizing how much they lost, and it's eating at them. But here's the real trick. Don't respond. You've worked too hard to get here, and now is not the time to let them back in so easily. Let them feel the desperation. Let them wonder if you've moved on, if you've found someone else, or if you're just done for good. The more they chase, the more they realize they've lost control, and that realization drives them wild. This is your moment to stay silent. When they start to pursue you, don't reward their efforts by responding. The moment you do, the power shifts right back to them, and you risk giving up the hard-earned ground you've gained. Silence is your strongest tool now. Let them stew in the frustration of wanting something they can't have. The more they reach out and the more they don't get a response, the more desperate they'll become, and the more they'll understand just how much they let slip away. Stage 6. The clash of freedom and regret. At first, when you disappear, they may feel a fleeting sense of relief. It's that rush of freedom, the belief that they're finally free from the weight of your presence, the emotional demand you placed on them. They might even convince themselves, finally, I don't have to deal with this anymore. It's an illusion of liberation, and for a moment, they might genuinely feel good about it. They go out with friends, swipe through dating apps, trying to fill the void you left behind, and for a while it seems like everything is fine. But here's the reality check. That freedom, it's temporary, superficial, and as soon as they find themselves alone again, whether they're sitting in their quiet apartment or scrolling through their phone, that sense of regret starts to creep in, quietly but persistently. The problem is, they didn't realize how empty that so-called freedom would feel without you. The people they thought could replace you, they're nothing more than distractions, surface-level interactions that fail to fill the space you left. It's like drinking salt water when you're thirsty. It seems like a solution, but it only makes them thirstier. The more they try to distract themselves, the emptier they feel. In a world where casual dating and hookups are the norm, they might have convinced themselves that moving on would be easy, that finding someone new would just erase the loss. But it doesn't. They quickly realize that no one can replace the emotional stability you provided or the genuine connection you shared. The fleeting comfort of distractions becomes painfully clear as nothing else compares to what they had with you. That realization knocks them down harder than they ever expected. So let them experience this so-called freedom. Let them enjoy their distractions, their new beginnings. But don't rush back in when the regret sets in. Let them sit in that empty space they thought would feel so satisfying. The relief they felt initially is short-lived. Your absence? that will haunt them long after they expected it to fade. Let them feel it. Let them understand deep down that you're not something they can easily replace. Stage 7. The desperate game playing. Once the regret truly sinks in, panic sets in. They realize they've lost control of the situation and they can't stand it. So what's their next move? They try to play games. Suddenly, they're acting distant on purpose, posting photos with other people, making sure it looks like they're living their best life without you. Maybe they post a cryptic quote about moving on, or snap a selfie that's a little too staged. Anything to make you wonder if they've truly moved on or if they're just trying to get under your skin. It's all part of a game, a desperate attempt to reel you back in. But here's the thing, you're not playing anymore. You've outgrown the childish tactics. You've evolved past the point of needing to chase, needing the drama. You don't even notice their little attempts to provoke a reaction. They think that making you jealous or playing hard to get will make you run back to them, but they're sorely mistaken. What happens when you've stopped chasing? What happens when you no longer care about the game? They'll throw everything they've got at you. Subtle digs, passive-aggressive comments, over-the-top social media posts. But none of it works because you're not responding. You're not feeding into their antics. And that drives them crazy. You see, when they can no longer get the reaction they crave from you, that's when they lose control completely. They're left floundering, desperate for a response they can't get. So here's the secret. Don't engage. Ignore the cryptic posts. Don't respond to the carefully crafted pictures or comments. Their game only works if you play along. The moment you stop reacting is the moment they realize they've lost their power over you. You've stepped out of the game, and now they're the ones left scrambling, completely powerless. Stage 8. The crushing weight of silence. Silence is a tool like no other, and when you disappear, it becomes one of your most powerful allies. The absence of your voice, your texts, your presence, it speaks volumes, louder than any words could. For them, it's a brutal kind of quiet. It's not just the physical silence, but the deafening space you leave behind in their life. And here's where it gets agonizing for them. That silence is heavy. It presses down on them, suffocating them with regret, confusion, and doubt. Every minute of silence makes them question their actions, forcing them to relive the moments when they ignored your calls, dismissed your messages, and took you for granted. Now, they would give anything to hear from you. For someone who's used to controlling the situation, silence is pure torture. They expect you to reach out. They expect you to beg for answers, to ask what went wrong, to plead for them to explain. But what happens when you don't? What happens when you vanish without a word and leave them to stew in their own thoughts, wondering if they've lost you for good? They can't handle it. Each passing minute without any communication feels like an eternity. And the longer it goes on, the more anxious they become, desperate for a sign from you. In a world built on constant connection, texts, calls, notifications, instant gratification, your silence is like a void that consumes them. It's so unnatural that they can't help but spiral. They were used to the noise of a relationship, even the arguments, the drama. But silence? Silence leaves them paralyzed, unable to move or understand what's happening. So here's the power you hold. Don't break the silence. Don't explain yourself. Don't reach out. Let them feel the weight of their own actions in the absence of your words. Each moment they spend in that silence will make them realize something they never expected. That losing access to you, losing your presence, is far worse than any argument or confrontation they could have had. Let them sit with that feeling. Let them understand the true cost of taking you for granted. Stage 9. The fear that brings them crawling back. This is the breaking point, the moment when everything falls apart for them. Fear. This is the part they never saw coming, the part that shakes them to their core. For so long they were comfortable. They took your presence for granted, assuming you'd always be there, that you'd stick around no matter what. But now with your absence, a deep fear starts to settle in. The fear hits harder than anything they felt before. It gnaws at them, and the questions spiral. What if I lost them for good? What if they've moved on to someone else? The thought of you being with someone new consumes them. They start picturing you laughing, creating new memories, sharing moments with someone else, and the realization makes their stomach churn with dread. No longer are they focused on their ego, their pride, or playing it cool. Now their mind is consumed with one desperate desire: to get you back. That fear drives them to act in ways they never thought they would. They might reach out in any form: text messages, phone calls, or even showing up at your door, pleading for another chance. They'll apologize for all the mistakes they made, begging you to understand how much they've realized your worth now that you're gone. It's all driven by a single thing: the fear that you've slipped away from them for good. But here's the cold truth. By the time they finally feel that fear, you've already moved on. You've found your strength, your independence. You don't need them anymore. Their fear is real, but it's too late. When they come crawling back, desperate for another chance, don't give in. Let them face the consequences of their actions. You've done the hard work of reclaiming your worth, and now it's time for them to understand that you're not someone to be taken for granted. You're not an option they can play with. You've already grown, already moved on, and if you've made it this far in the video, you've already won. You've proven yourself to be someone who values depth, wisdom, and understanding. Someone who walks the path of Stoicism. You've learned the power of moving on, of setting boundaries, and letting people feel the weight of their own actions. And as a bonus for sticking with me till the end, there's one last emotional stage they'll feel. But that, my friend, is for another time. Stay tuned and remember, your silence and your strength are your greatest weapons. Stage 10, the realization of emotional independence. This is where everything comes full circle: emotional independence. When you disappear, you're not just walking away from them. You're walking into your own freedom, your own sense of clarity, and most importantly, your own peace. In many relationships, we lose ourselves in trying to make the other person happy, in proving our worth, in seeking validation. But here's the truth: we forget that we can walk away. We forget that we have the power to demand better for ourselves. But when you vanish, when you take that step back, everything shifts. You start to see things more clearly. You realize that you no longer need their approval. You stop caring about their opinions, their moods, their expectations. You've awakened to the fact that your happiness isn't tied to them. And that realization, that is the most powerful thing you can experience. This is your emotional independence. And here's the kicker: they feel it too. They feel the shift. They notice that you're not the same person they once knew. You've grown stronger, wiser, and more confident. They can sense that you've outgrown them and that you no longer need them to feel whole. This is the moment the tables turn for good. While they're still stuck in their old habits, you've evolved. You've broken free from that need for constant validation, and their opinion, it no longer holds any power over you. Embrace your emotional independence. Don't go back to the old ways. Don't let them think they still have a grip on your happiness. You've moved beyond that, and that's your victory. So what's the key takeaway from all this? Stop letting people take you for granted. Stop being the one who's always there, no matter how poorly they treat you. The moment you walk away, the moment you disappear, everything changes. You hold all the power now. They'll feel it, they'll regret it, and they'll realize they've lost something they can't replace. If you're ready to reclaim your power and stop being an option, comment below with "I'm done being an option," because you're about to step into your strongest, most empowered self. If this video resonated with you, if you felt a shift in how you see yourself, consider joining our channel memberships. Your support allows us to keep making content like this that inspires people everywhere. If membership isn't for you, just hit that subscribe button. Both ways help the channel grow, and I truly appreciate every bit of support. Remember, you're in control now. See you in the next video.